Hey, Megan.
Hey, Seppi. How are you?
Hey, Emily. I'm good. How are you?
How are you guys?
Great. How are
Good.
you?
I'm good. It's the end of the day. I'm excited to chat with you guys.
We are so excited. So, for anyone who's watching, I'm going to read Emily's bio right now. Emily Abbate is a classically trained dressage coach and trainer with over 20 years of international experience. I always have a hard time. North American Young Rider Championship and USEF Developing Rider Program graduate and U25 Brentina Cup participant. She has trained multiple horses to Grand Prix and started over 1,500 young horses. Holy moly. Her foundation includes mentorship under icons such as Conrad Schumacher, Klaus Balkenhol, and George Williams, and she continues to develop through ongoing clinic study with where am I? Like Robert Dover, blending German and French classical traditions. Her training emphasizes confidence, clarity, and classical correctness for both horse and rider. She is also known for her long-standing reputable sales program offering amateur safe, classically trained horses with show ring potential and everyday rideability. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. Well, tell us how you got started down the path of horses, how you became a rider, how you became a trainer, and now a horse dealer and broker.
Yes, absolutely. So I grew up in a ag family. I grew up on a farm, mostly livestock, so cattle, sheep, pigs, all of that. But my folks were pleasure riders at heart. So my dad was a Western rider and my mom did hunters, very much on the pleasure side. And so I think every other lucky kid that got to grow up on a farm, I got a very, very sweet 40-year-old pony when I was like 4. Rode her around in her little swayback until I graduated out of her. And then they got me just this great little Shetland pony. She was like 13 and a half hands. And just spicy as can be. And she taught me to sit up. That was important. But she was just a great little pony. And we actually ended up getting her from a dealer. And she was just a gem. She was just sort of the best thing. So that kind of started, even that young, that started me understanding when I was like 8, 10, 12, understanding okay, this is a job in the world. This is something I can do. Went through Pony Club, did the whole thing, got into, of course, in Pony Club, it has to be jumpers and eventing. I am not a huge brave jumper, so I got through the sea levels. And once our cross country jumps got over 3.3, I was like, that's good, I'm out. So through that process, I ended up getting a fantastic little jumper that we found out about 10 days after we got him that he'd been drugged. And so that is something that we will discuss later on as far as things to understand about when to buy and what to buy. And again, that was a huge education point for me, understanding. So I got him when I was 12. And he's the reason I got into dressage, actually, because he was super kind and super smart, handy as all get out, but just fried, right? So fried out of the jumpers. And so as soon as those drugs wore off, we couldn't even take him around a low cavaletti course. He just was, whatever. He was never dangerous, but he was so stressed out. So I started working with a local dressage trainer, and I was like, okay, seeing over the weeks that he's getting better and I can actually affect him a lot more. And so he's the reason I actually got into dressage. And then from there, I was lucky enough to make a connection with George Williams at Temple Farms through a connection of a connection. That's how I met Megan. And just went on from there. Started buying American warm bloods because that was what was in my budget. Took my first American warm blood to Prix St. George. He just kept getting better and better. And we were like, oh, okay, keep at it, man. Awesome. Sold him. He was my first professional sale. I sold him to a lovely family that had 2 sisters that were riding. That's what they could afford. So they couldn't normally afford a St. George horse, right? So they split their money together, bought him. And because he was a non-traditional breed in the industry, we sold him for a good value. And so they were really excited. And that kind of lit that fire for me of like, okay, we can kind of change the industry a little bit here by selling amateur safe. He was kind, he was beautiful, right? He was a Perchie cross and big and black and gorgeous. And they were I still got Christmas cards from them every year until he passed away. And like, they just loved him. And so that kind of lit the fire for me of like, okay, I want to do this part of the industry as well.
I feel the same way. I have like the same similar start, because I was sold a really bad horse that was shot with a BB gun, and I brought it home and I couldn't ride it. I was like 14, 15, and guess what? It wouldn't go for it. And it was 17-3. I was a little peanut, and that's where I found George Williams.
Yeah.
Thank God. And then I wanted to sell safe and sane horses. So should we delve into what it's like, where should we start? I mean, there's so many topics.
Yeah.
What would you like to talk about first?
So we can, so let's go, let's start with kind of why, like you had said, like why we're doing this and like what's different about that from the rest of the industry. And nothing against anyone else in the industry. It's just what the industry is, right? It caters to bigger money, a lot more availability, flexibility in schedule. But the industry itself is supported by the base is amateurs, right? Amateurs that work full-time jobs, that have families, that have kids. And this is their love. And they really usually have, at least in my experience, and this is really what I sell, they're kind of capped out around 30K, right? That's like a big investment for them. And it is a big investment. I mean, that's for most people, that's a huge investment. I've had people that have come to me first to broker and then ended up purchasing one of mine that have said, hey, like we're literally like mortgaging our house again to get this done. And like, good for them. I mean, that's awesome that they have supportive families that'll do that. But just the fact that like that is necessary is a little crazy. So what I try to do is, and that's why I kind of got into all this to begin with, everything that I sell in my barn is basically 30K and under. That includes my St. George horses. Occasionally I'll either get a GP in or I will make a Grand Prix horse. And then that's usually either subsidized by myself to say, hey, I just want to place it with the best home possible. And you pay me what you can pay me, or that's a little higher. But for the most part, everything we sell is somewhere around first to second level. Safe, super handsome, kind, easy to be around. We always laugh that when somebody comes to try our horses that they can literally just pick a color and ride one because they're all good, whatever you want. So I wouldn't mind, like, if you guys have questions or anything, I wouldn't mind talking a little bit about kind of like the discrepancy between like that option and then like what your experience has been in the rest of the industry as far as, 150K, third level horses.
So I'm curious for the comment section, anybody watching. So are you, like Megan and I are kind of what we call it Central USA. We're in the Midwest. Where are you located? Just to give people an idea of what your clientele might be. Like, how far do people, can you talk a little bit about how far people come to see where you're located, all that?
Great question. So we're out of Greenville, South Carolina. We are about 25 minutes from our little GSP airport, which is an international airport. So it's really easy for people to get to. We do occasionally winter in Wellington, but generally speaking, we stay home. I may send a few down there for a couple months, but for the most part, we're home. And it's interesting because, I've lived a lot of places in the country. I've had barns in multiple states, and mostly because, I travel. That's who I am. But what's been interesting about that is very rarely, I would say 20% of our sales are made locally. Now, we broker locally a lot. We really rely on our local trainers to either, provide us brokerage options or purchase from us. But our actual like individual clients that are our AMI clients that are calling us off of advertising or Facebook or TikTok are actually flying in. And what's interesting is what we try to provide for them, and they seem to appreciate it. We appreciate it. We enjoy their company. Is we try to make it a little bit of like a fun thing for them, right? They fly in, we go to dinner, and then the next day it's horses and lunch and more horses, and and try to give them as much fun experience as possible, because this is a big event for them. This is a big thing that they're spending money on, and it's a big decision for them. And you can get that if you're spending, over 100K down in Wellington, you can get that experience. That is not an unusual experience. But most amateurs are not ever going to get that in their riding career. So we do try to kind of cater to them a little bit, because like it said in my bio, and I truly believe this, just because you may not have a huge budget doesn't mean you don't deserve good training, and it doesn't mean that you don't deserve good experiences.
So why don't you tell us what you envision the process is? Like, let's say I'm like, Emily, I'm looking for an adult amateur horse. It's 3rd level. And should they call you? Should they email? Should they text? And then where do you go from there?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is that I need to understand truly who they are and what their life is like. And that sounds like a little bit, I almost need to kind of become a therapist a little bit and understand, are you a fearful rider? Are you a strong rider? Are you, what has been your experience in the past with other horses, other buying experiences? Because that helps me understand both how to cater to them better, and also understand what actually type of horse they may be needing. Because, you guys know as well as anybody that's in the industry, you can have an AMI safe that is more forward thinking, right? That likes to go, that is much more, a little bit more in the bridle. And the right kind of amateur is going to like that type, whereas a more timid type, which there's nothing wrong with that, they're going to be overwhelmed by that. So I need to understand truly. I have a whole list of like 25 questions that we go over in a phone interview, or a Zoom if they're more comfortable with that. And that gives me, basically, I'm building out their profile in our database. And then we balance that profile against the database that we have as far as our brokerage horses. And I'll go into in just a little bit what brokerage actually means, because that may be a new word for some people. Either our brokerage horses or our in-house horses. And then we just kind of drop them off and say, okay, well, this one is not going to work at all for them. That's not what they need. This one is a maybe. Everybody gets like a green, yellow, red, right, tag for each profile. So, if they're looking for something really solid that's maybe more of a push ride, everything that's more forward, because we've got keywords and everything, is going to immediately drop off red, right? Not an option. I have to be super organized because I broker probably 50 to 75 at a time. And yeah, so if I'm not organized, I don't know what I would do. I would just completely, and it would be unfair to my brokerage clients, right? Because they may have the perfect horse, and if I forget about it or I lose the information, then that's not fair to them either. So we do our connection, we do our initial phone interview. They tell me what their budget is. We actually do a range. So when somebody comes to me and they say, oh, I can spend 20K. Okay, does that include your bedding? Does that include paying for your trainer to come down as well? Does that include your flights? Does that include, I need to know really what that means, because some people say, oh, I have 20K, and they truly mean purchase is 20K. Others say 20K is everything, right? Hotels, food, like everything. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But again, that will let me balance against my database and understand, okay, who can I actually show them? Because the worst thing, and you hear this a lot, the worst thing is going horse shopping, falling absolutely in love, and then realizing that you're 10K short or, whatever. And then some people scramble and find it, and then others just go home heartbroken. And that's just, we don't want to set that up. We don't want to set up failure. So, so then once they have that, we send very quick videos. So we can go over this too, if you guys want to make a note, on like TikTok and like how to like actually, because we all have TikTok brain now, right? It is what it is. So we try to keep our sales videos to our highlights, right? This is walk, trot, canter. This is their skill set, whatever their skill set is. And then we usually try to highlight something about them individually. I sold a pony years ago that was super like tarp broke. Like you could throw a tarp over him and ride him basically blindfolded. And so we put that in a sale video because that's a cool trick, right? Awesome. And the lady that bought him, even though he was a little 4th level pony, bought him because she was like, that's really cool. I think he's super safe. And I like, that's awesome. So we try to highlight that. We send videos out to our clients. They usually, if they're flying in, we like to have at least 5 for them to try in the area or in our barn. If we can't get 5, then we either hold off or we like just spend a little more time, with local trainers in the area. Like, hey, what else do you have? Once we have 5, we set up a time for them to fly in. And then we try to make sure that by the end of that trip, whether it's 2 days or a week, they're getting a vetting, right? They have found something that works for them. If it doesn't, if we are not able to do that, we try to put in extra effort throughout the next couple months to make sure that they're not having to redo the process with us so that we can keep funneling them, horses that might work for them.
So let's circle back to the term brokerage. Let's explain to our viewers what you're getting at. Do you have 75 horses in your barn, Emily, or?
I certainly do not have 75. I actually try to keep my personal stock relatively low. We're somewhere between 10 and 20. That gives me enough to give people a good experience. And actually, I may bring somebody, like if they're like first time buyers and they've been leasing, I might have them come down and if they're local enough to do that, and just like ride a bunch, right? So let me see them ride, do all that. But the reason that I can turn the volume that I do is because I work as a broker. So this is no different than like the real estate industry, or even there's car brokers, right? For vintage cars and high performance cars. So it's the same thing. So I basically am the advocate between the buyer and the seller, right? So it's my job to protect the buyer from any kind of misinformation or anything like that as best I can. I mean, I can't protect everything, but I do the best I can to get the most information as possible. And then it's also my job to protect the seller from extraneous negotiation, right? So sometimes buyers will come in and say, oh yeah, I have a $30,000 budget. And then really they actually want to spend 15 and they're just hoping they can needle somebody down enough. It's my job to make sure that that doesn't happen. And also all the negotiation goes through me so that, because as Megan knows, you're busy training, you're busy coaching, like you don't want to be on the phone or answering emails like over and over and over again about a negotiation. That's exhausting for you. That's annoying, to be fair. And it's also a little unfair to the potential buyer because it doesn't give them like a closed loop communication, right? So it's my job to say, what is your actual bottom line? What is the cash you're able to wire to an account today? And then I'm able to go to the trainer, owner, whatever it may be, other broker, and say, this is our bottom line. Where can you meet us? And how can we get a deal done? It's a huge part of my job is mediation, and a huge part of my job is negotiation, right? And making sure that everybody walks away feeling happy.
Now, you said you had a list of questions and you interview potential buyers. Do you do the same on the sellers and the horses that you broker? Tell us a little bit about, let's say I have a horse for sale. What does that look like for me? I call you up and say, I got this horse. Mm-hmm. Can you help me out? What do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have the same kind of, 20 questions or so, 25 questions that are, your basics, right? Like age, height, gender, experience, training experience, showing experience, personality quirks, anything we need to know about that way, health concerns, if there are any, or even just like general, if you've got a 16-year-old Grand Prix schoolmaster, we're going to expect that he gets injections, right? We're going to, we want to know that kind of stuff. any basic injuries that might have happened, what type of shoeing are they getting? Are they, you know, working with a specific farrier for a specific reason? There's kind of, especially from the seller side, there's no like right or wrong answers. And as people work with us longer, they do start to be more comfortable with like being really honest with us about it, because it doesn't matter to me if, you know, he needs equipads and pour. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. A lot of, especially our big warm bloods with their crappy feet sometimes, need that, right? That's okay. But it's better for me to know that, so that then I can go to a buyer that is okay with that kind of maintenance. And again, going back to that whole, what's your purchase budget? I also need to know what their maintenance budget is, right? Do they need something that's going to get fat on sunshine and, you know, and not wear shoes? Then I'm not going to show them probably a thoroughbred, right? Or a thoroughbred cross or something like that. So it's kind of matching up. It's like date matching, right? Matching up all that stuff. So, and then the most important thing from a seller side, from a trainer side, is I need to understand your schedule, right? Do you want us to do all the showing? Because as a broker, I can come in with either I can show the horse or one of my working students can show the horse. You know, if you're just busy and you don't want to do it, we can do 100% brokerage, which basically means if you show us where the tack is and we've seen it ridden, and we've ridden it at least once, we can set up appointments. You just give us access to the farm. We'll do everything. You don't have to do any of it. Some trainers really like that because they're just busy doing other things, especially during show season. They'll leave a horse home and then be like, yeah, it's home. You know, grooms are home. Just do whatever you want. Others prefer to show their own, which then again is another detail that we have to match schedules. So we have to make sure that your schedule, you know, fits with the fly-in schedule. We try to make sure all of that. So the job really as a broker is so detailed. It's so much detail. But the goal is to make it as seamless as possible. So the other thing that I'm going to ask you as a seller is truly, and again, this gets more comfortable as I'm like actually working with you more and more. You know, my goal is to work with trainers and other brokers for a very long time. I mean, I've had relationships with my current brokers and a couple of my trainers that I've sold horses with them for 25 years, right? Like we want to have that relationship. So as you get more comfortable with us and you know that we're going to send you good clients, I need to know clearly what is your actual bottom line so I can negotiate for you. You know, what check do you want written at the end of this? And then that gives me more leverage to go back to my buying client and say, okay, I actually know that this is their bottom line. So you either have to kind of do some wiggle room here and step up, or we'll just move on and look for something else, you know? So it's the same process, especially with a new person. It's usually a Zoom meeting. I love to go to farms. I love to do farm tours. If anybody wants me to broker and I can come to your farm and like look at all your fun stuff and hear about your dreams, I love that. Like that's amazing. So, and it helps me understand how the horse is living, what type of maintenance they're already getting, right? Are they living in a show barn? Are they not living in a show barn? I had a warm blood mare that was lovely, that had lived in show barns her whole life and was bought by a local owner. And that was a big adjustment for her. You know, she had to get used to, you're getting kicked out in the morning and you're going to be out for 14 hours. And I'm sorry that the bugs are biting you, but it is what it is. So, and she did fine. She did eventually adjust, but that owner did call me and say, hey, like, you know, she's really struggling. And so I called the old owner and I said, what do you think? You know, and she's like, oh yeah, she had her whole fly gear on, right? She was used to a fly mask and a fly sheet and all the leg covers and, you know, all of that. So it was just an adjustment. So the more I get to know you as a seller and how your barn runs, that's the better for me too.
So what's your radius? Like how far will you travel to represent horses that are in your area?
Yeah.
Like, what's your, is it a mileage? Is it certain amount of hours on the road, or how do you do that?
So I actually can broker, I have and do broker internationally. That of course is a little bit of a different process. I have to really trust the sellers for sure. Nationally, I'm usually doing that with either brokers or trainers that I know well. and have worked with for a long time, that I know that if they send me a video, I can trust that that is what's happening, you know. But for someone new, like, you know, we're here in Greenville, say somebody in California wants to get added as a trainer to the brokerage list. I'll fly out. Absolutely. I'll fly out. You know, I'll spend the weekend or whatever works for their schedule. I want to see a bunch of them ridden, even if they're not for sale. I want to see how you train. And again, there's no right or wrong answers. I just need to know this, right? I need to know kind of what you're presenting and what you're bringing to the table as a seller. We generally don't charge for that service. We generally don't charge for an introduction service. The only thing we ask is that if you do have a horse to broker, and we don't also have exclusivity, which we'll go into that in a second. But we generally do ask that we get first right. So say we have a client and then there's another client that's been presented, whether individually or with another broker. We do ask that we have first right to see the horse or to make an offer or something like that. And that's really more for our long distance clients, just because it's a little bit more, you know, logistics to get out there. And of course, flights are insane right now. So, so yeah, but most of my brokerage clients that are new are trainers that want to focus on training and showing, and they either absolutely hate sales. I hear that a lot. They're like, "Thank you for doing this because we hate it," or they're just too busy. And so we're trying to find, again, that cooperative relationship.
So I'm bugging in. Sorry, Megan. Okay, so the hard question is always money and commissions and things. Yeah. So what should buyers who are like, I need to talk to you, what should they expect? They have a trainer. Let's say they have a trainer. Where does this all, you know, because this is where people get really irate and angry with their expectations are maybe not in line with what's going on with the industry. Like, how does the commission work for somebody, buyers coming in, they have a trainer, there's you, there's, let's say, the seller's trainer. Where does this all hash out, and what should people understand is the norm in the industry right now? I think is where I want to go with that question.
Yep, absolutely. So I would say that there's a norm. There's a couple of normal paths that a broker or seller can do. And then there's a couple of outliers as well. So let's go over the two main, and then we'll talk about the outliers. So the two main options that we offer, and really a lot of trainers will offer this as well. A straight brokerage, which is basically, I just brought in, say, an 11-year-old, super solid. I like him. My working student's ridden him. He's great. But he's staying at his trainer's farm. He is staying there. He's staying in the program, all of that. When I come up with a client that he fits the profile and they say, yes, we want to see him, but they have a trainer as well. They have their own trainer. So what will happen is we have a very simple contract. And it's not a contract in the traditional sense, in that it's not really super binding. It's really more of like responsibilities, right? These are my responsibilities. These are your responsibilities. And what it does is it outlines, if you have a trainer that is coming with you, you are responsible for paying for that trainer. You are responsible for paying their hourly. You are responsible for flying them. You are responsible for covering any commission that they may want for helping you purchase this animal. That is, we do not handle any of that. We are not involved in any of that as far as negotiating percentages or anything like that. What we are our part of that is the trainer that is selling the horse is sort of on the same side, because they most likely have an owner on their side, right? And that owner is responsible for taking care of that trainer, okay? So if that means they're selling the horse for $30K and they are getting a 10% commission, it is up to the owner to receive $27K back at the end of that deal, right? That does not come out of our commission. That is their deal. Now, again, that whole like entry Zoom meeting is super important, because we need to understand how many parties are involved. And I've done deals with 5 different parties involved, and it worked fine because everybody understood what we were doing. So communication is key. And what we get, to answer your question more specifically, we generally, a straight brokerage is a percentage of sale. It's usually 10 to 20%. And I know 20% seems like outrageously high, but it is a sliding scale. So if you are heading towards the higher end of our brokerage, we drop our percentage down. If you are on the lower end of our brokerage, we are increasing our percentage. Just because our margins have to be there. I mean, our operation costs a lot to run, and to do good service for both our sellers and our buyers, and to do all those fun experiences that everybody likes to have when they come visit us, we need to have that cash flow. So that's kind of where that comes from. But it never changes. What we quote you is what you pay, right? So if we quote you 10% in the beginning, you will never do more than 10%, no matter what is negotiated down, right? So if you start at 25K and we're saying, 10%, but you end up finally negotiating with that seller to 20, we're still only getting 10%, right? We're not getting our initial, what we would have thought would have been the initial 10%. Does that make sense? Is that clear? Okay. So that's kind of how straight brokerage works. So owners are responsible for taking care of their trainers. We only basically take a success fee. That is kind of how we get paid. We don't get paid hourly. We don't get paid on, any kind of like a retainer basis. I mean, we can get hired out as a retainer. I've done that a couple times, but for the most part, we're just basically just getting success fees. The other option that we end up getting is something called an end of sale contract. So everything in our barn, we either own outright, like we've purchased from other trainers or we've purchased from auctions or whatever, which I know auctions are like a huge triggering thing for Americans, and we can go over that too. But everything in our barn we own and control. But sometimes what that looks like is something called an end of sale contract. And what that looks like is, say an owner just had, their second baby, and they're like, there's no way I'm going to be able to ride the next 3 years. So I want this horse to go to a good home, but I need it off my payroll, right? It's too expensive. I can't pay board for a horse I'm not riding. I can't pay training for a horse I'm not riding. And then what we'll do is we will basically take over the care and control of that horse. So we're feeding it, we're riding it, we're training it, we're doing whatever, farrier, maintenance, teeth, massage, whatever it needs. Even tack, right? If it needs a new saddle, fine, we'll deal with that. And in exchange for that, what they do is they sign over care and control to us. So it is basically a bill of sale, more or less, with a stipend at the end of that contract that says, I'm going to get a 10K check at the end. Whether that end is 3 months or 5 years, we get, this is the amount that I'm getting. And then they drop it off to us or we go pick it up, whatever it may be. And that contract is essentially our ability to negotiate for them on a sale. So we can put anything on top that we want, right? So if their bottom line is 10K and we think we can get 25, great. We walk away with 15K. And they are like, it's super important to us and to me that they understand that process, that they understand that they may find out that we sold the horse for 25K, and they need to be okay that they chose that bottom line and that they are, they exchanged that process. Basically, they exchanged the whole exhausting process for just getting a check at the end or a bank wire at the end. And I've done that for years, and most of my end of sale contract clients are super happy with the process, super, super happy, because it's very emotional. A lot of them are not wanting to sell, and just the thought of like someone coming and like riding their horse that they love and are having to make that tough decision. So it's better for them to put them on a trailer. Good boy, thanks for all your work. Go have a new life. It's so much easier for them to do that. You're still muted.
I am. I'm
there you
fine.
go.
Hey, can you hear me now? Okay.
Yep.
I don't know what's going on at this end. It's mass chaos today. But anyway, I think the biggest takeaway, which I think is so important for anybody listening to this, is communication, right? So when it comes down to commissions, when it comes down to expectations, and I love how you sit down with people and have a conversation with them, because like I actually had an investor, and I think it's important to talk about fraud, right? And so I was working for my investor and selling horses, therefore I was making a 10% commission. Well, unbeknownst to me, that individual was approached by another trainer in the area. And behind my back, they agreed that my investor would pay them a flat fee to bring clients. And I think it's important to have a conversation about that, because the trainer that was going to come here and look at horses that I was selling was going to get paid by my investor who owns the horse, but her client wouldn't know. And so when I found out that was being done, right, I said, I'm out. It's fraud. So everyone that's a part of a sale should know who's getting a commission. And so I just love how you communicate, and that's what's important. And I think as sellers, as buyers, if you don't know that your trainer is getting a commission from the other side, it's fraud. Now, if you know and you're comfortable as the buyer, you're paying a commission and your trainer's getting paid and you have no problem with it, it's not. But as long as everybody knows. So I just kind of wanted to stress that for anybody listening. And I think that's so smart of you. And now I get a lot of, I'll advertise and I'll actually get a trainer messaging me, hey, do you have availability for a commission on top? And I'm like, no, you approached me for your client. Does that happen to you? I mean, maybe not because you're a broker, but that happens to you as well.
Yeah. So that's actually a great point. So there's definitely, remind me if I kind of go off on a tangent, because I have a tendency to do that. But the fraud point is really important, and I have a point about that. But yes, a lot of times what will happen is other trainers will say, hey, is there room for, especially with the ones that we own, is there room to put, a 10% or 20% or whatever it may be on top? And for the most part, my answer is usually no, only because for us, our margins, the ones that we own, our margins are very, very specified. Like I said, I'm very data driven. I'm very detail oriented. So I know the second that horse steps off the trailer, it's for sale, right? Because that's what we do. But also I know what my margin is. I know that every day that passes, it's getting closer and closer to that break even point. And we can talk about break even here in a little bit, which is a good opportunity for people that don't have a huge budget and they want to kind of work with us, but they don't have a lot to spend. There's some break even options there for them. But so that does happen a lot. And that I agree. I think it's really important that people everybody is being clear and everybody is agreeing before that happens. On what is going to be happening and who's getting what and where it's coming from. Because it could be coming from, post-sale proceeds. It could be coming from, the owner could say, well, I'm going to take care of my trainer. I know what that's going to cost. That's fine. I think something that's really a struggle for a lot of clients to fully understand, and going back to Stephanie's point of the industry is complex and it has a lot of moving parts and a lot of Annies, to no fault of their own, because it's not their industry, don't really fully understand how trainers make money, right? They don't fully understand that pretty much your board and training is not really paying the bills for the most part. I mean, it's keeping the lights on and it's probably feeding your horse and it's maybe, putting some groceries in their fridge. But for the most part, that isn't really where most trainers are making their money. So it's really important to kind of understand and talk to your trainers first, or your coaches first, and understand what their expectation is before you bring in a broker. And I'm fine to have a group meeting, right? I'm fine with that. And I'm fine if we have a chat and, your trainer's this isn't really something, that I'm comfortable with, or I'm willing to kind of give up my percentage on, or, whatever. Cool. I mean, that's fine. I get it. It's no big deal. And the fraud aspect, we do everything, sort of upfront in the light. So if there is, say we send you a video and you love the horse and you've scheduled to come see it in 2 weeks, and, God forbid it goes out in the field and it hurts itself, right? I'm going to tell you that. I'm going to call you that same day and say, hey, he's fine, but, we maybe have a little bit of some soft tissue going on. We're going to get the vet out. I will send you the results of that, because you're an involved party now at that point, right? You're not the owner, but you're certainly interested in this horse. So even if it's not something that's like, career threatening, you need to know that something's happened. And so we'll send you as much information that either the current owner or we're comfortable with. If it's us, we don't really care. You can have whatever you want. If it's an owner that we're brokeraging for, then they get to decide how much they're willing to share. But that's super important. So that is one part of fraud. So that little chestnut horse I was telling you about, that jumper that I got, that was fraud as well. That was an example of fraud, drugging horses to sell them. Whether you're drugging them because they can't, they've lost their brains, or because you're drugging them because they're in pain. That is fraud. That is one version of fraud. Another version of fraud is double sales. I'm sure you've come across this as well. It's very similar to kind of what you were saying. It is not uncommon in the higher industry range. What will happen is an owner will come with a trainer and they'll agree to, say, $85K. That trainer will have another client or an investor that has agreed to $125. And what will happen is that owner will pay for that horse at $85. Then they will resell it without the owner's knowledge to the $125. Trainer keeps the middle, and the owner basically is unaware that that horse has already been purchased, right? So they go through the process. They give the money, they go through the betting, they go through the shipping, they go through all of that. A lot of times what will happen is they'll kind of flip them, right? So it'll be like a house flip. Some owners are okay with that because they're like, yeah, I liked him, but I like the, whatever it be, 40, 50K as well. So I'll take that and I'll go look for something else. But what happens, I've seen this happen multiple times, is they don't know. The owner doesn't know. And then what will happen is they'll kind of go through the process and then they'll get pulled out from under them. That horse will get pulled out from under them in the guise of not passing a vetting, or, the broker, the initial broker, they decided not to sell him or whatever. And so really what they're doing is they're using one owner's money to down payment a horse and then sell it twice, essentially. So that again, that happens more in the higher ranges. The things that you would have to look out for fraud-wise on the lower ranges, or I should say more middle to lower. And I consider middle anything 50K and under, right? Because that's a pretty big investment for a lot of people, and that's kind of mid-range for the industry. Both jumper, hunter, dressage, whatever it may be. The biggest issue that you're going to find there is probably just cover-ups, mostly just cover-ups, right? They need special shoeing, and, we've seen they look like they're just in steel fronts. And then we go to look at them and they're, in full pour. Again, I don't care. It doesn't matter. Some of my best ones have gone in full pour. But, and if audience has questions about what that actually means, I can go over that. But it's just a lot of kind of hiding little details about the management of the horse. And that's really where owners get into trouble. Is it's not necessarily that they bought a horse that wasn't what they bought. It's more that it came with a whole lot more issues than they realized. We had a lovely little 3-year-old that came in. I bought him off an auction. And again, auctions are scary, I know. We bought him to come into our farm. And I generally only run auctions, unless they're European auctions, for ones that we're going to own, because I know I can put the time into them. But lovely little guy. We were told that he had a rearing issue. Okay. Came in, and the first thing we do is they get massage, they get saddle fit, and they get dentistry. And dentist came and she looked in his mouth and she said, he's still got his wolf teeth. And it's like, well, no wonder he was rearing, right? So we just rode him in a halter for the first 2 weeks until she could come back out and float him. Fine. Never had an issue with him. Sold him as a junior pony. Never had an issue. So a lot of the times it's sort of lack of knowledge, or, just an old owner just not caring to figure out what the issue is. But again, being upfront, and we told his new family that he came supposedly with that issue. We've never seen it, but it might be there. You will find that if you work with us, we will tell you everything, and probably stuff that you don't want to know. Right? So what other questions did any of that bring up? Anything specific?
So do you deal with a lot of ranges of horses? It sounds like a 3-year-old coming from a breeder maybe, and do you only deal with dressage horses, or do you get some event horses, or?
Yep. So we do everything that is considered a sport horse. So dressage, jumpers, hunters, and eventers. I would say most of mine, 65%, are dressage, eventers, and hunters. Just because there's a lot of really excellent brokers in the jumper industry that have a very solid base. They have a lot of return customers. And really to show jumpers, I don't have jumpers in my barn because, again, we already talked about that. I'm not a jumper. I don't expect my working students or my grooms to be jumpers. I just can't show them very well, as from a sale perspective. So they either need, if I'm brokering them, they need to stay with their trainer. Or we do a lot of hunters, especially hunter prospects. So 3 to 5 years old, because we can put the dressage training on them. And our hunter trainers love it because they're good in the contact, they're soft over the back, and they have a change. So they've already done most of their flat work, right? They can take them straight to the show and do most of the hunter hacks. So I do a lot of, I would say, dressage, eventers, and hunters. I actually have a lot of eventers right now. I don't know if it's just it comes in seasons, right? Sometimes I've got all dressage, sometimes I've got eventers. But that would be my main focus. I have to be transparent. I have actually sold a couple reiners. I've sold a couple cutters. And that's fun. I like that. But it's usually a friend of a friend of a friend. And they're like, hey, it's an end of sale contract, right? They sold their house or got a job transfer and they can't take the horse with, they just need it off their plate. And I actually do have contacts in the Western world. I've got a wonderful Western pleasure trainer that I work with. I've got a great rein cow reiner that I work with. And I have a great cutter that I work with. So it isn't our specialty, but if somebody is like, hey, I really can't find what I'm looking for, or I have one that I need to sell, we can probably place it.
How about, gotta get you, Megan. How about the extremely broad and large topic, Europe?
Yeah. I like that as a topic, just Europe. So that is a broad topic, and I have lots of opinions about it. I'm old enough that, and I got into the industry at the age that I was, when Europe was still outbreeding us, right? They still had breeding farms that were just, generations forward from what we were able to produce in the US. However, that has changed very quickly. Probably by the mid 2000s, I would say, we started to really see these young horses coming out into Devon and coming into the Young Horse Championships that were really high quality, competing with European bred horses. So my point with that is that if you really want to go to Europe and have a good time and make it a horse buying trip, amazing, do that. I've done that because it's super fun, right? But you don't need to do that. Especially the average kind of amateur that has a trainer that wants to show locally, that maybe wants to go to championships, end of the year. Even if you want to be a Grand Prix amateur, there's no reason that you have to go to Europe. Now that may mean that you have to fly a little bit more around the country to see what we have. You may have to spend a little bit more in that travel in the process. You you have to be more willing to spend a year looking rather than 6 weeks. But I think it's important that as Americans, we support our internal industry, and we support young trainers. So that's something that I know Megan and I have talked about a lot in our previous years hanging out. There's wonderful young trainers here in the country, and every time you spend money outside of the country on buying horses, you are taking money away from them, and you are taking opportunity away from them. Because not only, and kind of circling back around, sorry, I go on tangents, circling back around to what we were saying about everybody getting their percentage. If a young trainer comes to me with an owner and we broker for them, that makes me happy, because I know that trainer is getting training money, right? That horse is going back to their farm. They're getting coaching money. They're getting training money. They're getting showing money. And yes, for our Ammies, this is their joy and this is their love, but for us, it's a business. And, we have to keep that in mind. And as an owner, I beg you to keep that in mind. It's not to say that we're going to nickel and dime you. And it's not to say that we don't want what's best for the horses, of course. But this is a business, and it has to be run that way. It has to be looked at that way. So as far as Europe is concerned, I would ask that everybody that can spend the time and money in the States to shop in the States, to do that. And that's really why a broker comes in play, because I mean, if I would tell anybody watching, okay, go find me a 8-year-old Grand Prix horse with no injuries, that has a clean show record, in your budget, where would you start? Most people don't know where to start. Most trainers don't know where to start. And so then you're just kind of like floundering around, like calling off of ads and doing all that. Whereas you can just call a broker and I can say, I have 2 or 3, or I don't have any right now, but let me call around to my own contacts and let me start doing the legwork for you. I mean, that's why you use a broker, because you don't have time or interest or connections to do it yourself. So going back to Europe, I think, almost all of my mentors were European trainers, and I have a special place in my heart for Europe in general. And they do a lot of things right. They do a lot of things right. One of them being is that, again, most Ammies may not know this, but for the size of country that we are, we have no subsidization from the government for our sport. None. Whereas Germany and Holland and all of the rest, for the most part, at least have some form of subsidization from their national organizations, which are government funded. So they have so much money pouring into their sport, which is why they've always been ahead. And it's because it's not to say that we don't have talented riders here and talented horses here. We're also fiercely independent as Americans, right? We do not like to work together. We're very threatened by each other. Which again is part of my job as a broker to, communicate and make everybody kind of understand that this is a cooperative process and not a competitive one. So I think Europe is a wonderful, fun experience. I do not think that for 90% of amateurs that have less than 50K to spend, and that's even, right? I mean, I think if you don't have 80 to spend, don't go to Europe. Don't go to Europe. You're going to get, as one of my mentors said, Europe is not selling us their best. They're not, right? So, right, of course not, right? We are, we're a top 5 nation competitively internationally. So why would they sell us their best? There's a lot of really great breeders in Europe that if you are interested in maybe getting some breeding stock, like if you're a new breeder and you want to bring in maybe a couple of young mares that will broaden out your bloodlines, I'm okay with that. I understand that, because our bloodlines are somewhat limited here. We have like the big 5 breeding farms that do a great job, but again, they have limited standing, right? They can only produce so much. So again, I think Europe's great. I think they offer a lot, but from a broker's standpoint, I I think you would do well to find gems here in the US.
And I think you're providing an amazing service, because there's so many, everyone I talk to, they're always like, why do you like selling horses? And I love selling horses. That's like my favorite, well, besides training horses, selling horses is just, I love it. You know, I love getting the Christmas cards. I would go to the horse show and 5 of the horses are mine. Obviously, they're not mine, but I love partnering them. And everyone I hear, they're like, oh, Megan, it's so terrible. And maybe explain. So, and I also think you're brave, because I don't like selling other people's horses anymore. Right. And the reason why is like all that back and forth, and I can't make a decision. And a lot of times, you know, an owner will try to sell a horse and then they change their mind. And I'm like, no, once you decide, right? So maybe talk a little bit about, how do you vet, you know, like the people? I know you did the questionnaire, but still, at the end of the day, there's a lot more that actually goes into the sale. And honestly, I think you're worth every bit the 20%. You know, they don't understand the phone calls or the non-phone calls. Like, people will just ghost you. It's rude. So, so talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. You are 100% correct. It's a lot of the exhausting process of all of that is just keeping the ball rolling, right? Keeping everybody in check, what's going on, communicative, moving forward until that option to move forward is exhausted. And it's funny that you say ghosting, because that it does happen. It does. Usually we've been pretty lucky. For the most part, if someone is committing to work with a broker, they are pretty serious, right? Whether they're buying or they're selling, because they know it's going to cost them something. Granted, it doesn't cost them something up front, but they are pretty, you know, they're pretty sure on the process. But I think the biggest thing that trainers in general, you know, don't love about sales is it is an exhausting process. From, you know, setting up appointments, getting that owner or that new purchaser to come in, you know, making sure that they're safe enough to even ride your horse. Because again, going back to that, we try to get as much information as possible from them. We actually do require that they send us a video of them riding, so that we, you know, because a person can tell you all kinds of stuff. And most people are pretty serious. Most people understand that their limitations, and they're willing to share those limitations with us. But there's a lot of things, as we all know as riders ourselves, there's a lot of things that we don't know about our own riding, right? There's a lot of habits and stuff that we don't pick up on. So we do request that they send us just a quick little, you know, whatever is up to their level, if that is possible for them to provide. If not, it is a mandatory walk, trot, canter if they are walk, trot, canter riders. To do that, we've got a couple little juniors that we've, you know, brokered for, that are just little up down riders, right? And they're just looking for their first pony. Yeah, cool. I can probably find that, but I still needed to see a video, right? I still need to see, like, how long are your little legs? Like, you know, what do you, what do you need? But handling sort of the, you know, people backing out and that kind of thing, it does happen. And that is unfortunately like a lost profit for us, right? It's a lost statement for us, because we've spent time with our trainers, and we've spent time with other brokers. Luckily,
can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
So let's talk about that, because that actually happened to me. You don't charge an upfront cost. It's all commission based, correct? So I actually went to Europe for a client, and she had said she wanted me to find her a horse. I went twice to this person's house and tried their horse. I wasted time, their time, my time, but not only my time, but their time. And then the lady backed out, and I was not paid, and I'm there trying horses for me to buy. But then I thought of her, and like, obviously I don't have her as a client anymore. She left right after that. But like, I just don't think people understand. And I have thought in the beginning, now, if I were to ever go back to Europe, I want a client, they have to put money down.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't have any issue with that whatsoever, especially if you are personally going, right?
Yeah.
If you're not just kind of acting the way that we would act on more of like a middle ground basis, where we would just kind of like be making connections and setting up, you know, video process and all of that. A lot of times, the few that we've bought out of Europe that have not come to our barn personally have really been off videos, right? So which is risky, and that's a whole nother subject. But it does happen, and it is possible, especially if you're working with reputable people. But yeah, I totally agree. And it is really difficult. It's very stressful when an owner backs out of a sale for both the new owner, right? The new potential owner, because again, most of our Ammies, like they are buying potentially their heart horse, right? This is the horse that they've dreamed about since they were like 12 years old. And they're spending all of this money. A lot of times they have family that's like semi-supportive of the process, right? So a seller backing out is much more damaging for us, both reputationally and also just like emotionally, than a buyer backing out. Because like you said, with this other person that you spent 2 days riding their horse and getting to know them, like they were probably like, okay, great. Like we found a good process. We found a good home. Like this, we like this trainer. It's hard for them to kind of like switch back into like sale mode then again. And every time a horse is ridden, and this is something that probably other people on the show has talked about, every time a horse is ridden by a non-professional, a professional has to get on it and reschool it, right? It's nothing against amateur riders. It is what it is. That's why I ride everything in my barn, and why my working students ride everything in my barn. Because as soon as we have even pulled horses that have been shown that day to a prospective client that it just was really not a match, nothing against the rider, but I was like, go get on him for a couple of minutes, right? And just put him back together a little bit. And again, it's nothing against them. It's just the process. These are living, breathing, emotional animals that are expected to toe the line and understand what the standards are. And as soon as that changes with a new rider, we need to put it back in place.
Yeah. And do you also present the horses? I mean, like you have to change your day around. You have to reschedule. You have to braid them. You have to shampoo them. You're entertaining. You're taking people out to dinner. We make chocolate chip cookies, right? Like, I think the first day is a production. Awesome. It's, you know, for me, I want people, it's like going to the car lot. Like, I take pride in the horse I'm selling. It doesn't come in from the pasture and it has mud on it. It is shampooed. It is braided. It is, you know, I put on a clean saddle pad, and then I try to ride the best I can and show them the way they are. So like that first day to me is a presentation. So I want the person to arrive on time, not an hour late. Yeah. That's happened. I've had people show up 30 minutes early because they think I'm hiding something. But I think the first day is about presentation. The second day, the horse will be in the stall, and you can do all the due diligence. I mean, it's still the same horse. I won't be able to hide anything the next day. But for me, it's like going to a horse show when I show off the horse the first day. I take pride in that. Do you do the same setup, or how do you present them? Yeah, so we're a very laid back barn. Like if you come to our stable, we're super laid back. We always laugh that we're like show barn / like community barn, because we want people to like come and drop in, and like friends of ours or other trainers in the area. Like if you're like passing by and you happen to like bring us a Dunkin', like amazing, like come hang out. But at the same time, you know, our care is very elevated. We're definitely a show barn in that perspective, right? Everybody gets iced, everybody gets massages, they have their own specific like work schedules. So we're kind of a balance. Like we don't braid when we show for prospective clients, only because, and this is strictly me, like I think that's amazing that you can do that. I'm a terrible braider, first off, and some of my working students are decent. But I want that it helps the Ammies, honestly, to feel a little bit more relaxed if they can kind of like
feel like they can grab a little mane if they need to. And also just kind of like that we're more chill, right? We're very like fun and enjoying our day, and we want you to have fun and enjoy your day. So we're a little more chill, but I mean, they're clean, right? They have clean laundry. I mean, they get clean laundry every day, but that all of that is definitely there. Our arenas get dragged every day, right? We don't have junk sitting around. Those are just sort of notes for like, even like private sale people that are just trying to sell their own individual horse. Like, make sure that you're presenting your horse in an environment that is appropriate for the value that you're trying to get out of that horse, right? So if you're selling a 100K horse, you're not going to show it at a backyard barn. There's nothing wrong with the backyard barns. But you're not going to get the kind of client that you want coming and seeing and like sort of experiencing that horse in a way that you want. We generally don't boot or wrap until they get there. They're not tacked up either. Like, they may be in the box or they may be just hanging out in the cross ties, whatever. But we don't put anything on them until they get there. Mostly because we want them to see how they tack up. That they're not girthy, or if they are a little girthy, like that we just kind of go over like, this is their routine. This is why we do this. This is why we do that. We show them their shoeing, right? So they can take a look at their shoes before they go and get it sandy in the arena. The other thing that I would be cautious of for anybody just in general, whether you're working with a broker, whether you're going to go see a local horse for sale, or you're flying to Wellington, like whatever it may be, do not ever ride a horse that you have never seen ridden. Do not. That is my safety standpoint, right? I do not get in anything that I've never seen ridden. I will do occasionally, like I may broker something into my barn on a sale, like on a video, but it's coming from a Megan, right? It's coming from a Volker. It's coming from trainers that I know and respect and know are not trying to kill me, right? But that's a huge thing, is do not ride anything that the owner or trainer or whoever does not ride first. And at least want to see it go and do basic things that it does, right? If it's a first level horse, it should walk, trot, canter, maybe do a little simple lateral work. If it's a Pre-St. George horse, then at least see some changes, at least see some basic work. It doesn't have to go through the whole Pre-St. George, but then it can extend and it can contract and do all the basic stuff. Because realistically, if they can't show that, they either aren't capable of showing that as riders, which is fine, but then hire a trainer for the day, or that horse cannot do those things for some reason, right? Whether the video that you saw was 2 years old and you didn't realize it, or maybe it's feeling uncomfortable, maybe it's a little back sore, whatever it may be. So big thing, but a big safety thing is do not ride a horse that you've never seen ridden.
I got a funny story on that. You guys want to hear it?
Yeah.
So I had went to Holland to go horse shopping, and I love the Dutch, but they'll sell you their grandmother. And this was a young horse, I think like 4, and they were like, hey, we got this amazing, and that's not what I was looking for. And so they put it on the lunge line. It is a fire-breathing dragon. It is snorting around, and they're like, you want to get on it? And I was like, no. I don't want to get on it at all. Get on it. And I'm like, no. Are you afraid? They were bullying me to get on it. And I said, I'm not looking for that horse. You brought it out. I have no interest. But if you want to get on and show me the horse, go for it. The guy got on. Horse went straight up and backwards and fell off. And to make a long story short, so I will never, ever get on a horse. And I wasn't going to anyway. It wasn't what I was looking for. So I had to give you that little story. Do you have any funny stories like that?
Absolutely. That is a good one. That is a very good one. So one of the big things that the reason I say that is because before my life as a broker sale barn, I've been a trainer, and, people try to send us, and I'm sure you've had other trainers on your, show that say the same thing. People will send us stuff and not tell us, oh, it rears, or oh, it bucks, or oh, it's cold backed. And they just will not tell us that. And that is just the worst, right? It's the worst way to find out. Hopefully it doesn't turn into a hospital bill, but it's dangerous. This is a dangerous sport, right? Even the safest deadhead horse can step in. I mean, I had one actually almost rotationally fall on me, hacking at the walk because he stepped in a rabbit hole, right? It wasn't his fault. I mean, he just literally, the ground fell out from under him, went down to his knees, got his nose stuck in the ground. And the poor thing. So it has nothing to do with necessarily that they are like a good horse or a dangerous horse or whatever. But yeah, I'm trying to think. We had one that we went to a jumper barn of a new-ish trainer that I was kind of getting to know. Luckily, the possible purchaser that I went with, I knew quite well. And I actually have dummy purchasers that we will use that are friends of mine. And they're really good Annies, but they can pretend that they're not so good. And we have them hop on horses that, may fit our profile, and just to like test and see if the trainers are being fairly honest. So there's a lot of sleuthing that goes into this. And don't get me wrong, we don't do this to everybody. We only do this if we're kind of like a little sus about somebody, let's just see. Everybody else, we just kind of, we let you prove yourself, and we're happy with that. But yeah, so we went, and they said that this was a junior safe eck horse. And so, okay, fine. She gets on him. He's great, walk, trot, canter, lovely, beautiful in the contact, could be a dressage horse, right? And they say, okay, well, let's jump him around a little bit. Okay. So we saw the trainer flat him, but we didn't see the trainer jump him. And so she goes around, he jumps a couple cross rails. Great. She puts him up a little bit, and she's a very confident rider. And she gets maybe 3 strides out from like a little baby, like 2.5 foot, like vertical, right? Like nothing. And he's supposedly doing the 4-foot eck, right? So huge. So he's supposed to be a solid guy. And I mean, raining stop, right? Like slides into it. And my first question to her was this a you mistake? Because that happens, right? It's a new horse. You don't necessarily, maybe he needed a little more seat, whatever. Maybe she dropped him a little too early, whatever. And she was like, no, like I had my leg on him. I had my seat on him. I had him in the bridle. He like literally just like slammed on the brakes. So we tried a couple, I was like, are you comfortable? She's like, yeah. So she has like an eventing background. She's crazy. So she comes back around. He does basically the same thing, but he's starting to turn his shoulder, right? He's starting to drop his shoulder. And I was like, okay, like we're out. And later it's funny because the groom of that barn was a friend of one of my working students, which we found out days later. And he was texting her and he's like, oh yeah, he's a dirty stopper. Like, okay, thanks for telling us that. So that goes back to the point of don't get on something that you've not seen it perform. It's skills that it is supposed to be performing, right? But yeah, it is a little bit of a jungle out there, which is really why, again, you want somebody in your corner, right? You want somebody vetting all of your sale prospects. You want someone vetting all of your owners. And I had thought of another kind of like subject to that, but it slipped my mind. So if you guys have any more questions.
You actually just said the magic word, vetting. Do you require your sellers? Do you say, hey, let's get some x-rays on file that people can look at before they, take a deeper dive into a full vetting? What's your thoughts and how do you work with that?
Yeah. So we have a couple mandatory sort of pre's that we do. Everything in my barn is pre-vetted. So everything that I own or I control, i.e. end of sale contracts, we pull the vet right away and we have them do basic sets of x-rays, right? So very simple, coffin joints, pasterns, knees, hocks, fetlocks, just like the basic, anything, below the elbow and below the hip line. Very simple, nothing crazy unless we find something crazy. We just do that because most of ours actually sell within 3 months of us having them in the stable. So they're fresh enough that an owner could probably save some money and actually just take that and say, okay, that's, we're probably good with that. We don't do back x-rays. We don't do anything, in the face unless necessary. But again, if we find that, that'll go back to that break-even process that we need to talk about still. But so we do a pre in everything we own. What that also entails is eyes, ears, and heart. A lot of vets kind of miss that, even though that's actually part of like the state exam. When you go and like you're shipping nationally, you have to get like a health cert. It should be eyes, ears, and heart. I had a super, super nice, lovely pony years and years and years ago that I actually was going to purchase as a prospect for our sale barn. This is when I was first getting into having my own sale barn. And owner was super nice. He was very upfront about he's had this pony since he was 2 and like told us literally everything, like everything that we needed to know about him. And my vet came out to do the pre-purchase, and the first thing he did was ears, eyes, and heart. The pony was blind, and the owner didn't know. I mean, I truly believe, because like, you know how you can read people's faces, right? He was shocked that this pony, because he'd had this pony since he was 2 years old, and he was like 9 at the time. So I think the pony just trusted him so much, and he lived on that farm his whole life pretty much. So it's like he knew where stuff was. So he didn't act blind. But he was like 80%. He had like 20% vision, both sides. So that was a simple, so like right there, I mean, yeah, I had the farm call, but my vet was like, he's blind. Like, you don't bother obviously doing anything else unless you want a blind pony. So that for me is the basis. So we do all of our lower extremity x-rays on our pre, and then we also do ears, eyes, heart, and then we also draw blood. We have a drug test panel done, as well as a metabolic panel done when they come into our facility. We require that if someone is brokering them in that full service level where we're going to show them and we're going to, do all that, we require that they do ears, eyes, heart, and blood panel before we commit to that contract. Because we need to make sure that we're not riding something that's drugged. And also we just need to, again, have that, because most of our flips are within 3 to 6 months is very average sale time for us. I don't know if that's normal for like Megan, for you. Do you hold them much longer than that, or is that kind of normal? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it's same. I usually tell people 3 months. If I am taking, like I used to take and sell horses for people, it was average 3 months. I kind of want to stay away from 9 months, but yeah.
Yeah, right. It starts to get, again, those margins start to get smaller and smaller and smaller for both the owner and the trainer, or the broker, the longer that it takes. And really, a valuable horse that is priced in a valuable range should not sit, right? It really shouldn't. It doesn't matter. I mean, yes, the economy ebbs and flows, of course. And we have boom times, and then we have a little bit leaner times. But for the most part, our industry is fairly insulated economy-wise. So really, if you're coming to a horse that has been like on the market for like a year, and it hasn't been like, oh, well, we pulled it off all winter because we wanted to put more training on it, something like that, that makes sense. But if it's been actively for sale for like a year, I would be a little concerned about that. Like, I would want to know, like, why have you just not had anyone come to see them? Are they overpriced? Are they inaccessible? Like, what is the thing that's happening here? Because realistically, out of every 3 sale showings, we make a sale, right? So usually if the horse is being ridden about 3 times by 3 prospective owners, or purchasers, one of them is going to buy that horse. Sometimes it's the first one, right? Sometimes it's just love at first sight, and that's great, and we love that. But it can be, usually up to 3, which is about 1 a month, which is kind of what our expectation is. We will show. I mean, if the horse can be set back, again, going back to that whole like putting the work back into it once it's ridden by an AMI. If it can be set back in a ride or 2, I have shown horses to multiple prospective owners, like 3 or 4 in a week. But if And that only happens when that horse is super valuable priced, right? Value priced. And so that would be like a fourth level or St. George horse that's 15K, right? That the owner is just like in maybe economic distress and they're just like, we just need it gone. So we don't generally sell anything that is what we call fault of their own, right? So if, and I would say anybody that's watching that is kind of in the buying process, you need to be looking for that as a potential red flag. You never want to hear somebody say, I don't like the word any advertisement that says sensitive. I don't like that. I don't. I'm a little suspect of that. That isn't really a great way to describe a horse that's forward thinking, right? If they're forward thinking, they're forward thinking. But that doesn't mean that if you touch them with your leg that they're going to get offended, right? Especially if they've had good training. And again, that goes back to the whole like my background as far as like being classically trained and being a Grand Prix trainer and stuff. A lot of sales barns, especially here in the States, don't have fantastic training backgrounds, right? They are mostly just brokers, and that is where the whole horse dealer thing gets such a bad reputation because they're pulling them out of the auctions, they're pulling them off the Amish, and there are wonderful Amish trainers and they're horrendous Amish trainers. There's one of my favorite breeds actually that you can get in the States if you've got a good trainer that knows how to manage them, are Dutch harness horses. They are incredibly talented. They're super fancy. I mean, chrome all day, right? Like big old stockings, like they're gorgeous. And they're really solid minded because they're supposed to be carriage horses, right? So they need to be pretty solid. But you have to get them from reputable Amish trainers. You cannot, again, that's where we come in. Don't just go to Amish country and hope for the best. But they are great. So for me, there's a lot of keywords in like advertisements. And even when I'm talking to other trainers, right? When I'm talking to like a new trainer that maybe wants us to broker for them, if I hear like sensitive or I hear maybe maintenance, common maintenance, to me, there's no such thing as common maintenance, right? There should not be common maintenance. I mean, again, if you've got a 16-year-old Grand Prix horse, he's going to have injections. That's fine. But if you've got a 5-year-old that's getting injections every 6 months, that is not common maintenance, right? Common maintenance is food, water, turnout, and training. There is not, right? There is not like a common medical need here. So be cautious of those types of keywords. And like the other thing, going back to like what you were saying about that they wanted you to get on the one that flipped over. If you're a timid rider or you're an AMI that likes to just kind of get to know a horse first, if you say to a trainer, and if you come to my barn, come for the week and walk it all week. I don't care. Like, get to know it, pet it on the nose for an hour. I don't care. So, but if you go to a barn and they push you to do a lap at the walk and then get up into the trot and then get up into the canter and you are not comfortable, like if you're game with that, cool. But if you're not comfortable with that, like, it is okay for you to say, hey, I'm just going to walk for like 15 minutes and just get to know them, right? Make sure the brakes work, make sure all your turning works. And if you don't ever feel comfortable moving forward into the next gate with that horse, it may not be your horse. And that's okay. Like, it's fine for you to cut a ride short and just be like, thank you so much for your time, but I'm just not clicking with him. Like, it's just not for me. Because again, this is a very dangerous sport. Even pleasure is very dangerous, right? So you have to feel comfortable in the environment that you're looking at horses. And again, that's where your broker comes in. Anything that I ever bring an owner to, either I would ride, because I don't sell anything, even if I'm brokering, I don't sell anything I would never ride. Because it's my reputation, first off. And I don't want anybody to get hurt. That's just, what's the point? So I want that experience, that like trying horses and going to be a like joyful experience, right? Fun. Like, oh my gosh, I got to ride 7 amazing horses. And then I found the one that I'm taking home. Like that sounds super fun. as opposed to, you know, I was like afraid of half of them, right? That is not good. So, so yeah, I think it's about, we got off the tangent, sorry. I think it's about understanding what you really need. But going back to the vetting, when you vet something, you have to be aware of how much you're spending for that vet. So if you would come to my barn, we have our own vet, of course. I don't mind doing sort of that conflict of interest thing. Some trainers are really, really strict that they will not use the stable's vet. For the most part, if I know the trainer well, or I know another broker well, I'm fine. Like, I'm fine. I trust that that vet isn't getting paid under the table, right? Isn't going to risk their own reputation or their own license, because you can sue for that, right? That is true. That's malpractice and fraud. So most vets are not going to risk, like, you know, making the owner upset if they find something and they tell you about it. So I'm generally pretty like okay with that. But if you want to be extra safe, most areas have at least 2 vets in the area. The other option that you can do is make sure that any x-rays that you get or any lab panels that you get, or even just like a written report on flexions. I love a good flexion. I won't x-ray unless I think that there's a problem. So what your vet will ideally do is they will review the report from the other vet. So especially if you're out of state, right? If you go see something, you love it, fly home, and then they're vetting it the next week, just have your vet be one of the contact people for the x-rays and whatever else you end up getting. So that's a huge time and money saver, really, because then you're not really paying like 2 vets. Because some people, I mean, I've worked with people that fly their own vet down, and that's fine. Like, if that's what they're comfortable with, like, that's totally fine. But I don't think that's necessary. I've not found that to be necessary personally. Maybe you've had clients that wanted to do that, but so yeah, so a basic flexions, and something to keep in mind for anybody that's never bought before, no horse will pass a vet exam. It is the vet's job to make sure that they don't pass, right? So they're trying to find something. That's their job. And, you know, I'm 42 and I've had ACL surgery. I shattered my tibia. So I have like, you know, arthritis in my knee. I still go to the gym. I still squat. I still run. I still jump. I still do all the things I do. It doesn't mean that if you held my knee, you know, flexed for like 2 minutes and then asked me to run, that I wouldn't limp off. Okay. So it's, again, I love a good flexion. Anything that is under a 2, I don't care. I'm fine with that. This is a personal thing that you as an owner and you and your trainer have to discuss and be okay with. But please have those conversations before you vet something so that you can be aware of, okay, what are we okay with? What are we maybe going to negotiate on? And what are we just completely like, absolutely not. Again, for me, it's ears, eyes, and heart. Anything, you know, I've had horses that have had like ring bone and have never had any lameness issues. I mean, the owners had to sell them for, you know, they had to negotiate down because they found the ring bone. But that new owner was willing to negotiate down and take that horse on, and no issues. So it's hard to say, you know, again, no horse is going to pass a pre-purchase. And if your horse or a horse does pass a pre-purchase, that vet did not do a good job. They did not do their job, right? So it's really what you want to spend. I mean, a normal pre-purchase can be anywhere between $330 and $550 for basic, right? Basic stuff. And I'm sure, as you guys know, it can go way higher than that, way higher than that. So again, that goes back to talk to us as your broker or talk to your trainer about my total budget for this whole process is this amount, or this is my purchase budget, this is my pre-purchase budget, this is my travel budget, and then kind of like, you know, lay it out.
Yeah, I find people are unrealistic when it comes to the pre-purchase. I look at it as it's a risk analysis, and the vet doesn't have a crystal ball. and tomorrow the horse can colic and die. You know, it could have perfect x-rays. And so, and usually what I tell people, I mean, obviously you need to be comfortable, so do what you need to do. But at the end of the day, did you pre-purchase your husband? Did you do the blood work? Did you do a DNA analysis? No, you dated him, you married him, you had kids with him. But we do way more to our horses than we ever do to our spouses. And it's like, wait a minute, that's kind of backwards. And the other thing is, like, be realistic with your expectations, because if you're a timid rider, you want to have fun, and the horse has some issues, but it's safe and you like it and it doesn't bite you and it doesn't kick you and you're going to have fun, then move forward. And you're not going to the Olympics. And I'm sure some of the Olympic horses, actually, they don't pass the jog, you know? So I think being realistic on pre-purchases, and obviously that's a trainer's job to, like, walk you through, but also ask your broker, like, what's realistic in this situation. So that's my 2 cents on it, because I just had to laugh on that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that again goes back to that initial, like, getting to know you conversation of, you know, what are you actually looking for? And then it's my job to educate you. Like, a huge part of my job is education, you know, is educating you as a new purchaser, or even as a trainer coming into the brokerage process. It's educating you on, okay, you know, say somebody comes to me with a 20K budget. I might have something in my barn, but for the most part, industry wide, we may not, you know, there's going to be a huge variety of what is in that budget range. So we need to talk about, what are your absolute, like, I need this. This is my absolute number one thing, or 2, 3, and 4 thing that I will not give up on. And then, you know, what are your I would likes? And then what are your, if it has it, amazing. If it doesn't, I don't care. I've had, like you said, I've had people that say, I want to be able to leave it for 2 weeks because I travel for work and come back and ride it without lunging it. Amazing. That's our number one, right? That's fine. Do you care? You know, she was like, I don't care what color it is. I don't care what gender it is. I don't care what breed it is. I don't care, you know, like, did not care. She's like, I want it to be this size range, because she was a relatively small person. So we needed something small, but you know, safety and suitability were absolutely number one for her. And I said, great, your budget is healthy for that range. Absolutely. But if I have somebody that comes and says, I want a St. George horse, but I only have 15 to spend, I can find you that, but it's going to have maintenance, right? Because it's going to be 15 and over. It's potentially not going to be showable anymore, because it may not pass any kind of anything. Or it may just be burned out, right? It may just have done the career thing, and now it just wants to sit at home and be fed carrots and, you know, pack you around. And if you're okay with that, then I can find you a really good buddy. But, you know, so part of my process is really, I mean, I'm the bad guy most of the time, right? And I've had trainers call me and say, hey, can you have this conversation with my client? Because, like, they're like, I've tried, and they're just kind of like not getting it. So, and I'm happy to do that too. So other trainers that are listening, if you want me to be the bad guy, I'll be the bad guy. But it's really not, it's for the best of them and their goals and their safety, and, you know, helping them understand. I shouldn't say most, a lot of amateurs really, really want that, like, big, fancy warm blood, and they either can't ride it because they're just not suitable for them. They're too short, right? Like, I'm 5'10", so I can ride a lot, but I wish I was a little shorter because I love riding ponies, and I can't ride ponies. So if I wanted to, you know, if I came to a broker and I said, I have this much to spend and I want a pony, I would expect them to say, girl, you can't ride ponies. Like, I'm sorry. So it's, you know, it's kind of a give and take, and really you need to work with a broker that you trust to tell you the truth, right? And it's also my job, like, if I go and I'm going to be with you when you're trying horses, if you hop off a horse and you're like, oh my God, it's my dream horse, I love it, and it was a complete disaster, I'm going to tell you that, right? I'm mean, you get to do whatever you want. It's your money, but you know, I've had a lot of experience. I know what looks good and what doesn't, and I know kind of what might come down the road if you go forward with that. Go forward.
Well, I have like 5 horses for sale. I had a lady come with her friend, and I usually stack them on what I think is like, this is probably their one, right? And so she tried the first 3. I got to watch her ride, and I was like, yeah, next 2, not really suitable for you. And so I had no problem saying that. And I thought I said it nicely, like, I don't think it's really suitable for you, right? Just, you can't ride it. I mean, is that what you want me to say? I'm happy to say it, but I'm like, I would like to be nice to people. And they were like, no, we want to ride it. And I was like, no, it is not suitable for you. I would think you would appreciate as a seller that I'm going to actually tell you. They left offended. And I was like, oh, well. But we as sellers can also say, oh, absolutely not. And I have, but I have found it odd that they were offended.
Yeah, right. And you can't fix that, right? I mean, you were polite about it and you were honest, and that's your job as a trainer. And it's your job as a steward for your horses, right? It's your job to protect them. And that's my job too as a broker. It's my job to place them in the safest, most suitable home for them so that they don't get flipped in 3 months, because, it's not what I thought. I don't ever want that. And we actually have a return clause with our personal horses that we own. We have a return clause that basically says, if for any reason this horse does not work for you, we get first refusal to take it back. Because I do not want my horses floating around. Because if I liked them enough and believed in them enough to sell them in the first place, I do not want them ending up in bad situations, usually through no fault of their own, right? It's usually poor management. They don't get turned out. Like at my farm, they're out all the time. They come in, we bring them in, they get their breakfast, they get worked, and then they get kicked back out. So if they go from 16 hours of turnout every day and getting worked 5 days a week to standing in a stall and getting worked 2 days a week with an amateur, no offense to the amateur, that's not the same horse you bought, and so when we sell, that's something too for our trainers, our coaches that are listening that, are in the process of selling maybe some of their own or some clients' horses. We do take home packets, and that outlines what their normal life is like, right? What they've been doing. And the expectation of this needs to continue in some form, because otherwise we're not responsible for what you pull out of the stall, right? The other thing that we do is they get a last day video. And so if an owner does the pre-purchase, they wire the money, and then they're like waiting on shipping, we will continue to ride the horse and, keep it in a program. And we don't that's something that a lot of, dealers used to do, is as soon as the money got put, they would put it in a box and that was the end of it. Like literally put it in a stall and not touch it. We don't do that. They stay in our program until the day they get on the trailer. So that being said, we video their last day. We video the last ride we had with them. We do confirmation pictures. We do confirmation video. We do height and weight, and we do feet videos, right? So we show what they're wearing. And it's a protection for us for the most part, but it's also good to know for the owner, right? For the new owner, so that they can see that they were, fit and happy and healthy and fat when they got on the trailer. And then if they have a 16-hour, ship and they get off and they're ribby and they're just uncomfortable, then they know to call the vet, right? Because something happened, right? Something happened in the transit that maybe wasn't so good. And so, all that stuff, again, it's very communicative. It's a very collaborative process. When it goes well and it is successful, it is super collaborative. And we want it to be. Like, I love my job, and most trainers and most coaches love their job too. I had one. If you have a farrier that is good to work with and you like your farrier and you want to, this is going to be the farrier for the new horse, I suggest that you get in contact with the old farrier. And farriers are a little touchy. Like, we love them, but they can be a little, you have to be a little careful with them. But most of the good ones will talk to each other and know each other already because they do conferences and stuff together. And so what we suggest is like, hey, you know, old farrier, can you please at least text the new farrier about like, you know, things you've worked on, anything that you've had to correct, anything that, you know, you might need to look for, like maybe he had like, you know, white line like 5 years ago, you know, just like things that we need to know about. That is something that I try to get done. It doesn't always happen because sometimes, you know, they can be a little touchy, but it, again, it's just setting the horse up for success.
I got one.
Okay.
So I love a good story, and I love a good crash and burn story, because who doesn't love the tea, the horrors of life. Do you have like an absolute top horror story? You know, something really crazy, something crazy and wild. And I don't know if it was something that happened, like, you know, Megan told us about her crazy experience in Europe, or anything you can think of that just was like, I can't believe this is what happened. Just something, and you know, scrub it so it's.
Yeah, of course. So I actually have one that has a very happy ending, but it was a long process for him. So a lot of times with the NSAO contracts, we will get horses that are changing careers, right? It could be a pleasure horse, like a Western pleasure horse that is going to now be a low hunter, you know, something like that. Or maybe a jumper that is going to, you know, come down and be a local pleasure jumper, whatever it may, or even a dressage horse. Mostly because they're usually burnt out. That's usually when someone contacts us, especially other trainers, when they contact us about horses like that, it's usually like they're being very honest and they say, hey, like, they're just not in it anymore. Their headspace is not in it anymore. And we just want to find them a new career. And again, because I have the classical background, I generally will kind of restart them, right? We'll turn them out. These are longer projects. We'll turn them out for like 6 months and then bring them back in and restart them. So a friend of a friend kind of got me in contact with a very big jumper barn. And it was an owner of that trainer. And he said, like, I can't do anything with this horse anymore. He was a young jumper champion. So I think it's a 6-year-old. And then from there, just kind of, you know, got pushed up the levels, not with this trainer, got pushed up the levels. They got him as a young Grand Prix jumper. And within like 6 months, I mean, they paid like $500,000 for this horse. After about 6 months of having this horse in training, he started to stop, he started to buck, he started to do all of this stuff, right? And luckily this trainer was nice enough to like understand, like, okay, I've tried all the stuff and he's just like, he's done. He's not going to do it. And it took forever to get obviously it was a huge investment to get that owner to like give up on him. And which actually leads me to insurance. So we can talk about insurance in a little bit. So we finally convinced the owner, like, let's do an end of sale contract, but I'm going to put a cap on this that I can get you $10K for this horse. That's what I can get you. Like, I can't guarantee more than that. If there's more than that, I'm willing to negotiate, right? If it ends up in, you know, a year, we sell them for 60, fine. I'm not going to take all of that. I'll negotiate with you. But I was like, I will take him. I'll take over everything, but I can't guarantee anything more than 10K. So, which was still risky because, I mean, he was lovely on the flat. You can flat him all day. But so we took him. And from what I understood, again, don't ride anything you've never seen ridden. From what I understood, one of my working students went and sat on him at the home farm, and she said, he's fine. He's fine on the flat. He's just really fried. I said, okay, fine. We bring him back, give him his time off. I think we only gave him a couple of months because he was like standing at the gate, like, hello, I've been like a show horse my whole life. Like, this sucks. Do something with me. So we brought him in and got him restarted. You know, we literally treated him like he was a 3-year-old. So we lunged with partners first, and he was great. He was fine. And he got to the point where we were able to work him like off, you know, just like a normal horse. But he would have days where he would literally slam on the brakes and just like turn into a mule, right? And just like refuse to leave, to move, you know. And I'm not like, I mean, I'll be tough on a horse if I have to, but for the most part, I'm not into like, you know, beating horses. It doesn't do any good. So we would just end up, when he would do this, I ended up taking him over. I had my working student on him who's a very talented rider. And she can handle pretty much anything, but she was like, I don't know what to do with him at this point. she's like, I get like 10 strides and then he stops and we stand there for 20 minutes, you know? So I was like, okay, but every time we tried to put him back out, he would just stand at the gate and be annoyed that he wasn't like doing something. And we're like, well, okay, you can't have it both ways, dude. So what we decided, the only option I had was he became my couch. And so I would sit on him and coach and teach. So I would tack him up. Some days I'd ride him bareback, but I'd tack him up and I'd walk him in a little trot, a little canter. And then when he slammed on the brakes, we would just be there until he decided to move again. And I mean, sometimes it would take like, you know, 30 seconds, 90 seconds. And then sometimes it would be minutes, right? Like a long time. And I just completely ignored it, And I was just like, you know, okay, good boy, I pat him here and there. And eventually he got so tired of being the couch that he'd go back to work. And then we just like would repeat this process. And it took me 6 months of that. 6 months. He was so burnt out that he was so afraid of work that he was like, and I think what we came to realize was that he didn't know when the work was going to stop. So he was like, okay, I'm going to decide when the work's going to stop. So once he realized that like if he stopped, we would just kind of let him chill, he got like really through that. And then he ended up we had a young rider that wanted to do the hunter flat and a little bit of dressage. Because he was a Grand Prix jumper. He had changes. He had, you know, most of the second, third level-ish. And she had like zero budget. And she came out and he was like a marshmallow for her. I mean, loved her. Like from the minute she walked in the barn, like he wasn't a real kind of, probably because of his life, he wasn't like a real like kind of snuggly guy, you know, like he was happy to see you, but he didn't get in your pocket. He didn't blow in your face, you know, none of that. But he was in the bay in the cross ties when she came up, and she was a tiny little thing. She was like 14 and maybe like 5'1". And so he put his muzzle on her hair and was like schnoodling in her hair and loved her. I mean, she got on him, did everything with him, like took him for a hat, brought him back, put him back to work. Nothing. And so like again, that was like a big thing. I know that wasn't like a huge disaster story like you were hoping for Megan's, but it did really instill for me again that there's always the right person for the right horse and vice versa. And you have to give them time. And that's why we work with trainers and coaches and, you know, other brokers that aren't here to be the old traditional, like scary dealers, right? Because like most horses really, unless there's something really truly wrong with them, and that does happen. But for the most part, they just need a better fit.
I was pushing on the wrong button there. Yeah, no, that's you know, it's so funny as you were describing it. I'm like, I think she just needs to go sit in the middle of the arena and just sit on this horse and just stand there. Yeah. Because you see that actually a lot in other disciplines. Yeah. The Western horses and the horses that have to just go out and be a rail horse and then stand in the middle of the ring, and you know, they come in and line up for a judge. These horses have to learn to line up and stand in the middle and just stand there and half fall asleep. And not be standing there doing this, you know, that whole dressage, you know, halt and immobility. It has to be more than the 3 seconds. Sometimes they need to be standing in there for 10 minutes. Right. And the horses have to learn to just be like, I don't have to always be moving around. So it's so funny you said that, because I was like, I think I know where she's going with this. I think I know what I would have done. Right. Run and sit on him and treat him like you said, just like your couch. Yeah. And just be like, here we are. You're just you're still got me on you, but we're just gonna stand here and I'm gonna drink my drink and chat with people and just stand here for however long we feel we need to stand here. Hour, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever. Yeah. And just till we're all bored. So that's cute.
Boredom is key for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Who's bored first? The humans or the horse?
Right, exactly.
Hopefully the human doesn't get out bored by the horse. But,
right.
So.
And I had one more quick thing. I know we're already past what we were originally thinking. I'm thoroughly enjoying our conversation, but
yeah, it's good.
So something to keep in mind is insurance. So some people, insure their horses from the minute they're foaled until they, pass in their old age. Some people put travel insurance on. We suggest travel insurance. You can get this through a lot of the good, insurance companies. You can just talk to a rep, tell them what you're doing, and they'll be able to help you out. You can get international travel insurance. You can get national travel insurance. If your horse is not like sort of insured normally, this is just a little bit of like an extra. So we suggest it for our higher end ones. We usually offer it as like part of their purchase price. Like we will pay for their shipping insurance. And what it does is basically insures them from the minute you wire the money to us to their home farm, to their new home farm. So once they get off the trailer, it expires, right? Like it's not there, but it's going to cover like, basic, you can get like a double coverage. So it'll cover some pasture accidents, depending on if it's a mare, a gelding, or a stallion. That's a whole nother thing. I don't know if Megan, you've ever had to deal with that, but it's there's a lot of details. So make sure you're working with a good rep that's going to explain everything for you. But it's going to, basically loss of use. So again, because like we keep it in our program, so it's working, it's getting turned out, it's doing all the things it normally does. So say it slips on the ice, right, and it's injured in some way. Maybe it's not loss of use. Maybe it's still going to be able to have its normal career, but it's going to need time off, or it's going to need vet care. It'll cover that. The travel insurance or the shipping insurance is going to cover anything that happens wheel to wheel, right? Driveway to driveway. So car accidents, falls in the trailer, colic during that time, anything that may happen that is going to require any kind of vet care or hopefully not, but potentially like end of life care. It does happen, right? I mean, again, driving on highways is dangerous, and you've got a load full of live animals.
I have a story on that.
Okay, yeah.
It's a horror story. And it wasn't me, but a friend of mine bought a stallion, a very well-known stallion out of Europe, breeding stallion, to bring back and stand at stud. I mean, this is a stallion who had a major career and was extremely well-known. Was going to be a really exciting stallion addition in North America, and the stallion did not make it to her farm. Did something stupid in the shipper, and I think it was in a semi, and let's just say the halter got misadjusted and the horse choked itself to death, essentially, which is really, accidents do happen. It's not necessarily that you have a trailering accident. Somebody hits your trailer there's some issue like a blowout or something. Horses can do silly things standing. He wasn't in a big box stall or anything. He was in maybe a stall and a half or something on a semi. And this stuff happens. Stuff happens.
Yeah. And I don't know if he was insured. I hope he was, because again, the money, it doesn't bring them back, and it doesn't fix the problem necessarily. And it doesn't help you necessarily replace them, but it keeps you from having to deal with not only the emotional loss, and the stress of that, but it should help you cover some of that cost, right? Some of that major medical cost, because as we all know, vet bills are expensive for an abscess, let alone, having to get a vet out on the side of the road, for something, I mean, we've had that happen. We've had, I had one that climbed over the front chest bar of a 2-horse and got stuck. And I was like, okay, after like 15, 20 minutes of like trying to figure out how to get him up off the bar, because he was like pinning it down. So it was so heavy, we couldn't slip it out, that I was like, I'm going to have to call the vet and get him sedated so we can drag him back. And, calling a vet in a county that I was hauling. So, you know, finding a vet that would come out at whatever time it was and do this is expensive. And, you know, luckily he was uninjured. He was fine. But it was a huge ordeal. And so, you know, insurance is really, really helpful for that kind of stuff. There is something to keep in mind. We insure all of our horses. We insure them for their cost, purchase cost, and then we continue to up their insurance as their training and, you know, increases and all of that. So the big thing with that is to make sure that you are getting insurance that is going to be suitable for what you want, right? Are you looking to replace this animal if something happens, or are you just looking to like maybe cover its retirement, or, you know, like whatever its major medical cost may be. And so that's something, again, just, you know, speak with your insurance rep about kind of what you want. So.
It's been a great conversation. Yeah, I mean, we've covered a lot of stuff, and yeah, I think you've demystified. I think that horse dealer tag to me just has this negative connotation. So I think the more, you know, we bring on professionals such as yourself, and we have these, you know, conversations where, you know, you're talking about, hey, I have the difficult conversations. I'm willing to have those conversations with whomever, trainers, owners, buyers, whatever, you know, because I mean, Megan and I have conversations, you know, between friends all the time of all the shisty people that we've come across. And, you know, I mean, it is like you talk to somebody about, well, let's talk to a broker, a dealer, whatever you want to call them. And everybody goes, ooh,
yeah,
ooh,
right.
ooh, you know,
Right.
You know, and I don't know that Megan calls herself a horse dealer as much as, you know, she's a trainer with some horses for sale.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
She doesn't have 20 horses for sale in her barn. So, you know, she's got 20 training horses in her barn, but, you know, what I'm saying? Like, there are people out there who, you know, they're definitely horse dealers, brokers, whatever, however they want to call themselves. And,
for sure.
you know, I was in the horse breeding business, clearly, as a conversation we just had about the stallion that came in. But, you know, you learn out real fast who your, you know, people in your business are, who are shady breeders that are not going to tell you anything. They're going to play stupid and hope that you buy it. And you didn't ask the question. You're not going to get told an answer unless you ask the question, kind of thing. And sometimes you may ask the question and they may still lie to you. Mm-hmm. So there's it is a rough business. I think people do need to have a professional on their side if they're looking to spend 5 figures on up. Mm-hmm. It is, as we talked at the beginning of this, it is a lot of money for people. You know, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 for most people is a chunk of change.
It is.
You know, if you're talking 6 figures on up, that's a lot of money for most people.
Oh, for sure.
I would love to be in that bracket of people who was like, yeah, I am not. So yeah, I think, you know, finding and making sure that your trainer isn't one of those who is going around, you know, telling you that, oh, I'll do it for you for free, and then calling up the horse broker or their friends and saying, you're going to tack on an extra 30% for me.
Yes.
You tack on, you know, there's a lot of shade and shystiness.
There is. And that's,
what are you saying this stuff?
That's why we, you know, our contracts are, I should say our agreements are very, very clear, and everybody involved has to read and agree to those agreements.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's so important. And communication, you know, have those hard conversations. I love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate it. And I've enjoyed our conversation. And great questions. Very, very
You're
good.
in the dark now.
I know. I didn't turn my light on and the sun went down. Sorry.
Yeah. Yep, it happens.
How should our subscribers reach you? I know Stephanie has put up your Facebook page, but what do you prefer, a phone call, or do you prefer contact by Facebook?
Yeah, I'm open to whatever. So the Facebook is great. If you want to direct message me there, that's totally fine. My email is super simple. It's just emily@emilyabbate.com. So it's first name, last name. Mm-hmm. That's super easy. That's my direct email. You can text me. I can either put that here, or I can tell you, like, you tell me what's better.
You can say it if you want to.
Yeah. So it's 561-632-5291. I'm fine with the text. If you call me, I will not answer, right? So text me, tell me what you need, and then I will set up a time to call you back. I'm so busy, I do not answer unscheduled calls. So please just text me. I mean, you're welcome to call and leave me a voicemail, but the best way is to just text me. And then all of our socials, including the website, will be up live again early next week. I don't know when this is going to air, but it'll be somewhere around like the 6th or 7th.
It's airing live right now.
True.
So yeah, do you want to go ahead and tell everybody what your website URL is?
Yes. So the website is asrdressage.com. Make sure you add the dressage because otherwise it goes up to the saddlebred registry, which is what Stephanie figured out. And that is actually going to be all of our socials as well. It's ASR Dressage. And that stands for the American School of Riding, which is our home farm. So it's going to be all across, we're on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and then our website as well. And once all of that is up, there's going to be all of our sale videos. We'll do highlights of like specific, horses that we love this week or whatever it may be. And we'll also do education on conformation and skill sets to look for a specific type of rider.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So cool. Thank you so much, Em.
Absolutely. Thank you. It was so fun.
Yeah, we had a great night. Thank you so much. And I know, you gave up 2 hours of your night, so we really do appreciate it.
It's good. Yeah.
It's fun. I love we both, I think, love doing the live streams. I think when I suggested to Megan we start them, she was like, "Ooh, I don't know," but they're fun.
Yeah.
They're
yeah. Anytime you want me back, I will come hang out. I loved it. It was great.
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be great. There's a million things we could talk about, I think.
So much more. So much more.
Absolutely. So, well, thank you again for your time. Thanks everybody who's watching. Make sure you hit subscribe. Your website and all your socials will be live next week.
Yep.
Today is July 2nd. This is when it went live. And of course, as I mentioned at the beginning, this is available on demand on YouTube. So
Great.
By all means, send all your friends.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks so much for coming. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have a great night and thank your family for letting us steal you for 2 hours. Right, Megan?
That's right. Thanks, Em. This has been a blast.
Yeah, absolutely. Bye, guys.
All right. Yeah. Bye. All right, Miss Megan, that was another great live. We've had a couple of really fun people this week. 2 live streams almost back to back. It's been great.
It's been awesome.
Yeah. These are so much fun. So hope things are going well with you. You got big plans for the 4th?
No, I'm going to take it easy.
Yeah, me too. Well, have a good night. Say hi to Mr. Cameraman.
I will. Thank you, Steppers.
Yep. Thanks, Megan. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks for watching.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.